Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Inkarnate live stream. Hey, it's Wednesday, so that means it's another master class session. Super excited about this one. We're doing isometric interiors. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by isometric, I've got a nice little dancing dragon tavern right here as an example of what I mean by isometric interior. If you do like this map, you can totally clone and edit for personal use. I provided that link in the chat. Now, if you are watching via YouTube, I will provide that in the video description, okay? All right, now, as you can see here, we have this nice isometric tavern that I made right here. And if you guys want, we can go ahead and reproduce this. We can remake this with, the tool here, or we could make something else. There's also, we could make like a potion shop. We could make a temple. We could just reproduce this tavern or a variation of this tavern. You guys let me know in the chat what you think would be nice. Either of those options, a potion shop, or just reproduce this tavern, or a different variation of this tavern. But, you know, we can totally just reproduce the whole thing. So I'll let people kind of decide that. While people are deciding, we'll go ahead and switch over and we'll create a new one, a toy shop. Oh, that's pretty cool. We could just create the shop itself, and then we can kind of figure out what details for what kind of shop it would be. So a shop does kind of sound fun. I like that idea, better Dan. All right, well, let's go ahead and create a new map, and we'll let other people chime in who are watching. A tailor shop. Oh, I'm seeing shop as the general theme here. So we might just go with a shop design instead of a tavern that we have here. So I'll create a new map. I'm going to go to Fantasy Regional. And while I'm putting this together, I'm going to have people kind of decide, hey, what we're going to do here. Or even a smithy. Yep, I like that one. That one's a little bit harder and might take longer. But a shop, nonetheless, is a good idea. I'm going to choose my landscape aspect ratio and ultra 4K. Remember, if you have a lower end machine, don't use 4K. Yep, we've got a tavern as an example. Let's do a different type. I agree, Bitter Dan. Absolutely. So I'm sticking with landscape aspect ratio. I'm going to be editing in 4K just so we can see those nice, crisp stamps. We're going to open it up. Now, the first thing that I generally do when it comes to any kind of interior, even if it's a battle map or whatever, I usually make the screen black because with the interior, unless you're on the ground floor, you don't generally see the outside. And when it comes to isometric, I generally don't even show the outside, even if it's isometric. It doesn't mean that you don't have to. It's not some ironclad rule. But for this particular example, I won't be showing any of the exterior. It'll just be black screen. So if you just go over to the brush and just click color, black, and then fill, make sure it's set to BG, and then the whole thing will be set to black. Now I have that black background there. It's all fun and games until you end up with grids on the wall. Yes, absolutely. So let's go ahead and turn the grid on here. Okay, and this it's set to 40, but I'm going to use 20 by 15, so it's nice larger grid here. Have that on. Now, when you start working on any map, you always start working from the ground up. You wouldn't start making the walls first or making putting details down like lights and windows and stuff. You would always start from building from the ground up, just like in reality. You build the foundation, and then you build the floor on top, and then you build the walls to encase it in, and then you start building up from there, adding more floors, or you start adding furniture and details. So you really start from the beginning by building the ground first. And by building the ground, you set the parameters of how big the space will be. And so now, unfortunately, with the shape tool, the isometric grid does not necessarily snap to grid yet, but that's something I'm sure that we'll work on. But you'll click your shape tool, and you're going to click a pen, and then you're going to turn off. You probably don't even really need a stroke, though you could put one if you want. I generally don't. You could do fill, and there's a couple options here. You could use a texture from Fantasy Battlemaps or Fantasy Regional as the top, or you could use the clipping mask, which is what I'm going to use, because with the clipping mask you can paint on various levels, right? Like I want to both show the cobble, and I want to show maybe some dirt on the floor and maybe some spilt wine on the floor. And to do all of that stuff, I'm going to have to do a little bit of painting. And so using the clipping mask as the fill, it works better. Otherwise, you'd have to use all these different fills and rooms or shapes to create all the kind of layering on top of it. So clipping mask is the way to go. And what I do when I start with my creating my room or my building is I make the basic shape first. I'll start with like a rectangle or a square, and I'll start with that first. And this could be like, consider it to be like the main hall. And what I'll do is I'll carefully select one side, and then if I just hold down Control, it might be Shift, it depends what kind of computer you're using, you can go ahead and go across like this, and you'll notice that by holding Shift, it snaps to certain degrees. That's perfect because it's already snaps to the degree that I need within the isometric view. And then I'll just go ahead like this, go across, line it up with the grid. And I'll just stop right there, press Enter. And then there you go. There's that first step. And so this is going to be the main shape. From here, you can build out the shape, right? You could add like a pop out, maybe something on the side. There's all these different things that you could do, but starting with the basic shape first and then moving from there is really, really helpful, because if you start making all these odd different shapes, it kind of gets really difficult to put the wall around it. So stick with a basic rectangle or square, and then you can add on to it from there. So by that, I mean I could, and let's go ahead and switch back to pen, and I'm going to switch preview, I think. Let's see here. I should be able to, oh, it does it automatically. Like if I wanted to, I could create a different part of the entrance. Oh yeah, let me make sure I line it up with the grid. Let's zoom in so I can see better. And you want to make sure you have merge shape. And you have that grid to help you out with how many spaces. And you just press Enter, plus, and then it should merge those two shapes together. Now, adding these little sections to the side of it really adds some character. It adds some dimension to it, because if it's all just the exact same, just this very flat type of rectangle, then it starts to look weird. So just throwing in these small little tiny pieces right here really, really, really help. Now, since this is a shop, I don't have to do any crazy amount of all these different L-shaped angles and everything. What I'll do is put the focus less on the shape of the floor, and I'll put focus on the verticality of the map. And by that, I mean the various levels that I have. And I don't mean one floor, second floor. I mean everything's on one floor, but different displays are on different tiers going up, like a staircase. And so we'll have 3 tiers with staircases leading up, going up to the top. And so I'll show you the design that I'm kind of thinking of, but it will look something kind of like this. First, I'm going to add a texture here. I'm going to paint it to the foreground layer. And there's a really nice pavement 2 texture right here. It should be pretty small, so you'll have to bring the scale up a little bit. So if you go to advanced settings, just click that and then go down. Here's the advanced settings. You just got to click this little arrow for it to go up if you get lost. And then just go to texture scale and bring the scale up, because it's really, really small. You have to bring the scale up. And what I like to do is I generally like to have my ground be a little bit darker. Whatever texture I'm using, make it darker, so that way I can contrast between elements that make them lighter as the higher up that I go, to create this sense of depth. So when you're making a ground texture, at least for an interior, I'd make the ground texture just a little bit darker. So I'll go over to color after I've changed the size and just bring the brightness down like that. And then I can just go in and I can just go fill, make sure it's set to FG. And then I have this nice stone floor that I have it. Now, when you're deciding what color a floor is going to be for an interior, it depends on what the structure is, right? If it's also depends if it's the ground floor or second or first or third floor, right? It depends on the material. So it makes sense that if you have a second floor, a floor above, or a first floor above the ground floor, it makes sense that it would be made of wood, so that way it's not too heavy and it's not, the structural integrity is a little bit better. Oh, hey, first-time chatter, by the way. Welcome. Another first-time chatter. Awesome. So many first-time chatters. Love it. So the texture that you're going to choose for the ground will determine both on what the structure is, like if it's a temple, or if it's maybe just a cheap hut with just a dirt floor, or if it's a tavern that's on the ground floor, or a shop. Okay, so the ground floor, the texture depends on what the structure is and what floor it is. Because we're just doing a single floor potion shop that has various tiers, we can just use stone as the foundation floor. All right, so then the other floors that we create on top are going to be made with maybe wood, which would make sense, right? So let's work on the walls. And when I do work on walls, there's only two parts of the walls that you need to work on, because you don't need to make all four walls because it wouldn't make any sense. The walls that you work on are going to be these two sides right here. Let me get this set up here. These sides right here. Okay? It doesn't make any sense to show these walls, because if I did, it would be blocking what you, the viewer, or what the players can see, right? So you have to do these walls instead. So those are the back walls. And think of that as the backdrop in which the entire scene that is this interior is going to be against. Let's go ahead and delete that. So we'll start by making the walls. And there are a couple ways that I go about doing walls, but most of the time I use clipping masks or I use a texture. It just depends. Now, in the previous tavern, I used poles and I used some textures. So let's go ahead and put those together. Okay. All right. Oh, if you're having trouble, by the way, you should always just close other tabs when you're working on Inkarnate, especially if you're using Chrome, because it's there's a limit on how many megabytes. So just be sure to close other tabs. If you want to do other things, and just save your map and then just close out of Inkarnate. But because Inkarnate is an online tool, it requires those resources to be running that tool. So just remember, okay? All right. So let's make the walls. And the way that, well, actually, let's make sure that I get the tiers right first. My mistake. Let's draw up the design first, and I'll just use the line tool to do this. And I just want to show you what I mean by various tiers, because it might have been confusing at first when I said that. So what I'm thinking is something like this. Like this would be the ground floor. Right here, this would be the ground floor. Right here. And then it would go up a level with some staircases. It doesn't have to be exactly that high, but close. And then we would put it down here. And then what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and copy and paste these to create the various tiers. Oopsie, I might have to go up a level. And then this ground floor, since it's a shape, I would bring it all the way down to layer -5. Actually, I would do, yeah, let's do layer -5. That should be fine. And then I would lock it so that you don't accidentally select it. And I'll delete this right here. And I'm just going to take this and just copy and paste it. So I'll just create a group. Copy, paste. Copy, paste. This is the kind of the general idea, the shape that I'm kind of thinking of. It will look something like that, and then a staircase that pretty much goes up down the center, kind of like this. And then all the display stuff, we can put shelves and stuff on this side. So all right in here will be display, maybe some display against this back wall, displays against this wall. All this will be display, whatever it might be, potions, weapons, armor, whatever it might be. And then down here, we'll actually have the cashier right here. So this is going to be where the cashier is. And then you can put more stuff on display, like right here, basically. So I think that's the general design. So what I'm lacking in the base shape of the floor, I won't be lacking in verticality, because each section, what we would call maybe a half step level, even though it's all on one floor, it's still various tiers that go up. And this creates a unique architectural design that makes it interesting and kind of makes up for that lack in the mass of the floor, okay? Now I'm noticing that I'm running out a little bit of a room, and so what you might end up having to do is quickly save. I'm just going to call it ISO shop. And then after saving, I'm going to resize the map to build for more verticality, because right now there's just not much room. that I have. And what I could do is I could just scale the whole thing down, but instead I'm going to resize the map. I'm going to resize the vertical part of it so that I get a little bit more room. And one thing that I'll do is I'll turn the grid over to square. And then this way I can kind of make sure that the grid is right. So if I go to resize, snap to grid, and I'll just create a little bit more verticality, go up a little bit more just so I can get those floors, get that right. And just in case I want to add an A-frame. Okay, I think that should give me enough room. That's about almost a square. If I go up one more, that's about a square. I think that looks good. Let's just confirm that. And I'm going to go ahead and save and proceed. And then what we'll do is it will save the original, and then it's making a clone of the resize for me. And then once that pops up, we'll continue working on the design here. Now I have made I have made a potion shop or a shop already with this design. So some of you who are familiar with my work will probably already recognize that. So this design will be not unfamiliar to you who are familiar with my work. So about, if I scale it, I think it's just about there. And what we'll do is that I don't have to make each individual tier. I only have to make one tier, and then I can copy and paste and edit each one to kind of create the verticality part. And then I'll fill in this part right here, these parts right here with black, so that way it will look like it's put together well. So let's go ahead and just remove all this stuff. This is all the sketch. Perfect. Now I have that. I'm just going to quickly save it because whenever I do a clone, a resize, and then I always just save it right away just to get it over with. That way I don't forget. Or some kind of internet timeout happens and then some kind of error happens. So I usually just save right after a resize just to be safe. And then what we'll do here is I'm going to be creating the tiers and the back walls. We can start probably by making this back wall over here and then also the tiers. Let's switch back to isometric. Perfect. And I might switch the grid over to a lighter color so I can kind of see it more. I was thinking maybe white, and then we'll bring the opacity way down. Let's even bring it down a layer. Here we go. And then we'll bring the opacity way down. Okay, there we go. Now I can still see the grid, and it's there working with me. Okay, perfect. This has been shaped. Been locked, and you know what? I think I'm going to rename it to floor. Perfect. And now I'll know what it is when I look at it. So if I have a bunch of shapes, I won't be like, well, what is that? Okay, let's get started on how to make the tiers. So what I'll do is, when you're working with isometric, unfortunately, you can't just use Fantasy Battlemap stamps for a lot of stuff because there's this angle problem that you have. Isometric is very picky about particular angles. And so what we can do is we can use some stamps from Fantasy Battlemaps to work to our advantage. And what a great one to use is a pole, because a pole doesn't have any 90-degree or angles on it like that. When you look at a pole, it has a rounded tip at the bottom and then a rounded part at the top, and you can see an exposed face at the top. That works perfect for isometric. So if you wanted to use, let's say you wanted to make the frame of the walls with half timbers, like you see with a lot of traditional or a lot of medieval stuff, you have half timbers filled in with daub. And to create that, we can use poles to act as the timber frame for the wall. So that works out perfect. So let's use that. And what I'll do is I'll create the back walls, and we'll just see. And I think this back wall first. And it might have to be tall because of the tiers. So what I'll do is maybe use this one right here. This looks all right. We'll start here with this size. And it's going to go all the way over to here. And where I start is with corners first. Start with corners. You can also use the line tool for this. Though, just so you know, with the line tool and pole, they don't have this circular face right here. The cap for one of these with the line tool is this knobby part right here, not this. So one problem you'll bump into is you need to use the pole stamp itself and not the line tool for that. And I'm going to use, since I'm going to maybe create a lighter color wall, I want to make a darker color wood to be the frame, and then the daub, which is, think of like stucco, some kind of filler or drywall for a wall. And I'll go ahead and turn the shadows off for all, and I'll turn the brightness down. And we'll start there first. Next, I'm going to use the fill. I'm going to use shape. Let's use the pen. And then with this, we can actually use a texture for this. And what we can do is there's a couple options here. We can use like a wooden floor texture. We could use maybe a stucco. And the way that I go about doing that is just take the dirt right here, and it's got these nice artifacts in it. And what we'll do is we'll desaturate it, and we'll bring the brightness up so it kind of looks like that white daub-like color. And then I'll change the texture scale so it's not so big. Perfect. And then I'll go ahead and just fill in the whole shape like this. And remember to hold down that control key. And then we're going to create the wall part. Okay. Perfect. And it's a little on the bright side, so we could even bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. And then what we can do is we can add more frame as well. And you can use the grid as your guide here if you wish. Oops, I think it's off a little bit here. Oopsie. Let me turn off or lock this back part of the wall real quick. Okay, there we go. And what I'll do is I can separate these by using the grid. So 3 across, 3 here. Oop, I'm off by 1, and that's okay. If you ever feel like that happens, you just have to change it up a little bit. There we go. Okay. And you know what? I actually kind of like it when there's a little bit of asymmetry, because it actually looks more interesting. It adds more character when maybe there's a pole that's off by an inch or two or whatever. It may sound weird, but that asymmetry, those little tiny little mistakes like that, actually look nice. They add a little bit of character to a map. So if you're off by maybe an inch or two or whatever it might be, don't beat yourself up. It's actually kind of nice. Unless you're maybe making some kind of symmetrical temple or something, it makes sense that you do want things to be lined up. It's going to be built to be kind of symmetrical if that's your goal. But for something like a shop, it's okay if there's some little errors there. Now, after you've done that part, then we can go in and actually use the line tool to use the poles. So, because what we're going to do is we've already got verticality frame, right? Those wooden poles right there create the verticality. What we don't have is the horizontal or the lengthwise beams. So we have to create that next. So let's just go in and just go to shape, or not to shape, sorry, line tool, go into the stamp and just type in pole. And some interesting tricks to create dimension with this. Check this out. What I'll do is I'll just go like this and then go 1 right here and enter. And I'll push it forward. Looks like it needs to go up. And here's what we'll do. All right, check this trick out here. I'm going to increase the size and I'm going to change the brightness to match in. So here's the trick. What I've done is I have this pole right here is covering the front part of this one, but it's hidden behind this one. So creating some sense of depth there. So if I copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And if there's some that are off, this is a great opportunity to figure out where your mistake was, right? So you can push this up against here if you want. If you want to add that, push this one up against here, and then add in another one, copy, paste. It's up to you. A lot of different ways you can do it. You could have 2. Let's say you wanted to have 2 of them like this to change up the design. Whenever you make a mistake, there's always a way to kind of fix it. You can always push this way like this, and then we'll create 2 poles on this side, and then we'll create an interesting design at the end of it. There you go. Okay. And it still looks interesting. So now we have that back wall set up. There are no mistakes, just pleasant, happy little accidents, right? All right, so now that you've done that part, you can start adding in more details to the frame. It's up to you. Right now, we're already at 24 minutes, and we have a lot to do. And this might go over this might go over the hour mark, but hey, that's just the way it is when you're making stuff like this, because this is just one of those things that has a lot of detail. I'm going to separate these just a little bit more to create a little bit more space. There we go. I think that looks a little bit better. Now you have options here. You can round it off and kind of put in these last pieces by using the tool here and just put it on top and go across if you want to top it off. And you can just put it right on top of all of it like that if you want. Remember what I mentioned, it doesn't have the, see here, it doesn't have that open face there. So know that mistake that you'll have to work with right there. Okay, and we'll make it just maybe just a little bit bigger too. There we go. Push these down a little bit. There we go. Okay. So now we've pretty much wrapped up that wall. I'm not going to add any more details because we have a little bit of time left. I could maybe fill in one, but you could make a lot of different frames here. But let's just create this group, and we're going to call it left or right wall. Sorry, the right wall. Because there's only the right and left wall, you have to put right back wall because there's only two walls, right wall, left wall. So you'll create that one next. So now that that's created, now we have the height. Now we know how tall our building is, at least at this part, because we haven't created the A-frame. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. Same design here. We'll go ahead and take this, copy, paste, and we'll put it here in this corner. Just like that. And then I'll put another one right here. Let's see here. 4 evenly across. I think that looks about right. One there and one right there. Okay, that looks good. Now, the one thing that we're also going to add is we want to add an A-frame because I want to show kind of the roof, like where is the roof angle at? And so the way that I go about doing that is I'll copy and paste and put another one right here and just put it right on top like this and just angle it up. Now, the higher up this middle part goes, the greater the pitch of the roof, okay? So if you want a low pitch roof, then you would make sure that this center pillar is going to connect to where the A-frame is, and I'll show you in a moment how that looks. The higher up this pole goes, the greater the pitch of the roof. If it's going to exceed, then you'll have to, if it goes off screen, then you'll have to resize the map. I don't really want to have to resize it again because that'll take time. So I'll just stop right here. And just in case you kind of see what I mean is this. I'm kind of like this. So that's going to create the A-frame. So now you understand what I mean by when that middle pole is, the higher up it is, the greater the pitch is of the roof. Okay, now I don't have to use that, though I can if I want. And I can go across here like this. Like this, just go right across. Okay. So you're kind of getting the general idea of how it works here. You can put the frames together. You can put another frame, another piece like this to kind of create this frame, this piece right here. What I generally do is I'll go across like this. And then that way, when I go to connect, I know which way it'll go, right to there. Perfect. So this is what I mean by using the, creating a more detailed frame. And you'll have to edit these pieces as you go so that it kind of makes more sense. But you get the general idea there. So then now all we have to do is just fill it in, right? So I just go in like this. Go across here, here, press enter, and you'll have to push this back a layer, obviously. There we go. Okay. And one thing that I do, too, to make a difference is that I'll make one wall darker than the other. So I'll take this wall right here, this right wall, and I'll take, let's see here. Oh, it didn't select the other piece because I locked it. That's right, my mistake. So this and this. So let me ungroup this. My mistake. And then I'll group these pieces. That was a mistake on my part. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Okay. It should have everything. Oh, did I shave it? Create group. There we go. Right wall. Forgot all about that. Sometimes you'll forget that you locked something and then it didn't select it and group it. So that happens. Don't worry about that. Okay, so now that I've done that, then I can go ahead and select this one. Create group. Call it left wall. And then from there, what I'll do is I'll go back into the right wall, select the shape here, and then just go in and just bring the brightness down just a hair. Just to make sure that it has to be noticeably darker. So that is noticeably darker than that part. So that works out well. So I think we're getting the basic shape together. We're at 80. Let's go ahead and save it. We'll quickly save. I mean, one thing we could also do is do the, I think we need to add the runner, but I don't want to add more details. So we'll just do a wooden runner board at the base. So I'll show you what I mean by that. We'll just take this piece right here. We'll use this shape, and we're going to start right here, and we're going to run it all along the floor like this, because it looks weird on the connection there. And I'll go ahead and bring this up a layer. There we go. Okay. And then let's go ahead and bring the brightness down. This is closer to the ground, so I'll make it a little bit darker than the rest of them. There we go. Okay, so you're getting the general idea on how to fill it out. What you do is you start from the ground, build the shape of the room with the ground. Then you'll start building the walls. I just used poles to create the wooden frames, the timber frames, and that works out perfect. And then once you've created the framework with the poles, whether it's the line or the pole stamp, then you want to put a texture behind that frame or fill it in that frame with whatever texture you want. You could use a wood texture. And the great thing about using a shape is that I can change it, right? I could take this dirt texture right here, go in and just change it to some other texture that I want. So if I wanted to use a wood texture, I could do that. And you notice that it's already white because it's kept the same color, the same advanced settings. So you could change it that way. And so that way you have just a white painted wooden one. So it's up to you which way you want to do it. For here, I think I like the wood. So I'll kind of go with that for one wall. And this other wall can be this daub. And one of the reasons why is you're not going to see a lot of that wall. And because there's going to be some steps there. So let's go ahead and create those steps now. And the way that I'll go about doing that is I'll just create one, and I'll use poles first to create the step. And let's just see how big they are. So I'll just measure this up here, how big a step is. That looks about right. And I also want to think about how much room that I want. So I'll start here, and then put another one right here. There we go. And then the staircase is going to be right here, going up. Okay. And one thing I don't have to do is I don't have to create this wall right here. So I'll end up using the shape tool to black this part out. And I'll show you how I go about doing that. Let's go ahead and use a pole for this. We'll have it go all the way across. Let's make it a little bit bigger, and I'll put it up a layer. There we go. I don't want it to make it look like a rail. I want it to make it look like there's a whole floor here. And then just like before, let's go ahead and lock these shapes so I don't accidentally select them. And then I might have to push this up a layer. And then with the shape tool, I'll create the next wall piece here that goes across like this. There we go. Press enter. There we go. Okay. Oopsie. I've noticed that I have a shape there. There we go. And then let's copy paste this and put this below it, just to create the other part below. There we go. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll select, I'm going to lock that as well. Let's select this, create group. There we go. And then I can push this up a layer. There we go. And then what we'll do is we'll create various floors like we did here, just like this. So a floor here, and then another floor right here. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I measure this out so that there's room. There we go. One will be that size. Another one can be like that size. Let's see here. Just measuring things out to see where everything is. I think that looks about right. Okay. Cool. Just want to make sure that I'm getting the measurements right so they don't create enough room, like I have to extend the roofing parts or anything, or this back wall. And so I just want to make sure I get that right. Okay, so that was easy to put together. Now I want to create a floor that this is going to go on top of. And so what I'll do is just pretty easy stuff. Is I'm going to go ahead and just take another pole, and I'm going to go ahead and put this right here, get the angle right, put it right across like that. And then we'll put another one that goes across just like this. Perfect, just like that. Great. Okay, we're getting it. Copy, paste. Great. Okay, coming together. And then the next step, let's go ahead and take this shape and we're going to lock it. And then we're going to put a different type of floor here. We'll actually put a wooden floor on here. That's going to be that wood-like color. And so what I'll do is I'll go into adjustments here, turn the saturation back up, but I'll make it a little bit darker. And I don't really like that the wood is at that angle, so I'll have to change that angle, go to that gear and just change the rotation. You can go either lengthwise or you can go across like this. It's really up to you. I think the lengthwise this way works fine. Now you will notice that the wood does not angled properly. And so what you'll notice is that this is going to be conflicting to the eye. And so you'll have to create more things in an isometric angle to break from that. So when you first look at this, you're saying, well, these planks, where they end, the lines are not right. That's okay. Don't worry about that. You can also change it to a different texture if you want. You don't have to use that. But I'm going to use this wood, and I think the overall shape works fine. Once we start putting a bunch more stuff on top of it, it will break from that because it looks confusing at first to the eye. Let's also just add a little bit more little frame pieces here. It makes sense to just keep adding more frame pieces. I'll just go ahead and just shape these up a little bit. Here we go. In fact, I'll keep them where I had them, actually, because this is where the staircase is going to be. That'll work fine. There we go. Okay. All right, so that shape is done. Now we can just copy, paste it. Oopsie, not within the group. My mistake there. Select the group. There we go. And I can just stack these right on top of each other. Copy, paste, one more. Let's make sure that I got the height right. Ooh, it's a little too high. You see, there's the mistake that I was worried that I was going to make. So, but this is okay. We can always extend this further up if we wish. These are a little high. What I could do is just change. Let's actually change it up so we don't have to do more work. So what I'll end up doing then is just change the size of these. Whenever you make a little mistake like that, there's always a way to fix it without having to make all these crazy changes. Just change the size of these. And then I'll bring this up. Oopsie, not that one, the other one. There we go. And then this shape will go up. There we go. Okay, it's a little bit smaller now, so that should fix the shape a little bit. Okay. There we go. Errors will be made, let me tell you. And this is actually perfect, because now we have a little bit more roof space, a little more wall space right there. Great, perfect. All right. Great. Once you've done that part, it looks a little funky right now. So what we'll do now is just take the fill color. We're going to use color black. I'm going to use the pen. And then from here, what I'm going to do is just take the shape here, go across like this. I'm just going to follow along the poles. And don't worry about if it's on the right layer yet. We're just going to go across like this. Okay. Oopsie, my mistake. That should go all the way down to here, really. Oop, I see where the error is, and we'll have to fix that. But that's okay. We will. Don't worry about that. I just wanted to give you guys the general idea first on how to put this together. There we go. Okay. So we'll have to extend this upper level, but already you're getting the general idea, and it already gives an interesting dynamic. You see, now it's kind of broken up that weird shape. So what I'll do is I'll just open up this piece right here, and then just go in, and then just push it all the way across. This is an easy fix. Easy fix. We just go in, copy, paste, put one in there, just stack them on top of each other, just like that. Okay. Not too hard. And then I can just take this shape, copy, paste, just copy it again, put it right on top. Perfect. There we go. And then with this one, I'll just continue filling in where I left off. Enter. Okay, there we go. You know what? Let's actually just get rid of this whole piece right here. I think that'll just look nice. There we go. Plus, there we go. Okay. Let me turn off the grid because it looks weird with the grid on, but now you can see it, its shape. And so now you have each level of it, and then we can add the staircase that's going to be in the center going up to each one. So you guys get the general idea on how this is going to go. So far, I'm liking it. I'm going to go ahead and save it. We're already 40 minutes in. This is definitely going to take more than an hour. I hope you all have the time, and I apologize for the length for it. But these things, these isometric ones, they just take a little more time because, you know, the tool is not geared specifically to make this stuff. That's why this is a master class. We're showing you how to make stuff outside of the box. So this is really the direction that you go in. After you've made in the different tiers, you then need to fill out with black wherever those tiers left space. And that kind of creates that kind of, I don't know, 90s RPG kind of look to it. And some people like you know, the more isometric look to it. Other people don't. Just depends who you are. I don't use the isometric a lot for battle maps. Maybe in VTT once in a while. Really, what I use these for is exploration, being able to, maybe if players want to run a shop or something, things like that. I try not to use these for battle maps, but you know, it's really a matter of personal preference, right? Everyone likes different things. It's up to them. All right, let's go ahead and lock up these shapes. Let's go ahead and lock pretty much all of this stuff up so I don't accidentally select it. And so you already see that I've kind of put it together. The next step is to add access, right? There needs to be a way for people to get to each floor. And so what's perfect is we can go into Fantasy Regional, and what you'll notice, which is really nice, I think in Pirates, let me check, in Pirates, they have these nice wooden stairs right here. Perfect. These work great, and they'll just work perfectly. Now, they're a different color, so you might have to end up like changing up the brightness a little bit so it kind of fits in with the color better. And we're going to have to copy and paste and put another one, and we're going to create this dual staircase that goes up. And what I might want to do is add some railing to it. So we'll go ahead and take some poles, and we're going to create some railing. I'll show you some pretty cool tricks on how I do this. So we'll go back to here, click pole. You're going to choose a very small one. And what we're going to do is we'll create the stair posts. One there, and one there. Okay. Very important to remember the angle in which you use these poles. That open face right there at the top, flat face at the top, needs to be facing upward. And when there's something going across, that face needs to be facing to the left, not the right. See that open face? It looks off like that, but when you flip it around and have that face be on the left side, it matches in with the symmetry of the map. All right, so first you'll create those poles, right? And then after you've made those, you're also going to want to create the guide rails, the railing. And when you make the railing, you want the face to be at the bottom, just like that. There you go. And if you want, you can add a second piece of railing that continues on right about here up on top. And you'll have to bring this big pole up another one. There you go. So if you want 3 pieces, you can, just like that. And you can push the railing further down if you want. If you want it to go all the way down, which I kind of do. I want the railing to go all the way down. So I can't stress to you how important using poles are. I mean, they are so helpful. Until Inkarnate decides to create a isometric interior editor, this is pretty much the options that you have for now. And believe me, I want an isometric interior. Believe me, I want that. Please gimme, 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 gimme. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll just continue where the poles are on this side. And then same thing here. Okay, there we go. All right. All right, there we go. So now you have some railing there. All right. Well, I would make my own stairs with the shape tool, but let me tell you, it takes a little while, and we're already so far into the stream already. But don't worry. But I agree. I personally do not care for this this kind of staircase. Honestly, I wish that they would be a little bit more. There'd only be like maybe 3 or 4 steps, but yeah, I totally agree. Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna add a couple more poles in here. Yep, I agree. I wish it was only 3 or 4 steps, but I am feeling lazy today. I'm sure you have those moments, right? We will. I'll make a set of staircases in a little bit. Here, first, I'm just going to copy and paste this. So I'm going to create group. And now I should be able to place this multiple times. One on top right here, like this. And then another one on top right here, like this. Should have a layer. There we go. Okay, I think that's about right. And there should be just enough room. There should be just enough room on either side for people to get through. But I think the staircase is kind of put together there. So I think overall it looks good. I'll just save it real quick. We're coming together. Yeah. It's going to be just we customers. You know, we cater only to the we customers. You biggies are just going to have to wait at the door, I'm afraid. If you can get in, it's going to be a tight squeeze. All right. Now that we've added the railing in, we'll add more details and stuff as we go. There's so much, but we have to first just create all of the different floors and everything first. Let's go ahead and just select all these and lock them. I don't want to accidentally select them. So now we have even more locked. Okay. All right, nice. Let's go ahead and add in, let's go ahead and create some table stuff. So what I generally do is there are a couple ways that you can go about this. You can use these docks right here. I think these docks work fairly well as a table or a shelf. These, you know, you can make them a little bit smaller. But here's when you can start judging in your scale. Oh, that's what I've really turned the grid on, but we can use these as either a table or you can use it as a display. You could add it as a shelf. You can also use some other docks. Like there's some shorter ones right here. These can work as like a plinth or display. You could also go use other ways to make tables and benches are to use circular stools from Fantasy Battlemaps. So you could go ahead and take a table. Check this out. You can take a table just like this. Make sure it's set to 0 degrees. And I'm going to turn the shadow off. Place one and then and then just copy and paste another one and place it on top of it, up a layer. Then take this bottom one and make it darker, like that. And then select both, resize. And I'll take this bottom one if I want to create a thicker part. And then create group. And then you have a tabletop, a circular tabletop, which I can use as displays anywhere I want. And of course, we can add some stools or add some legs to this table. Just make sure that you push them down in the bottom layer and make them even darker than the bottom one right here. So now we have the legs of our table. And then you can go ahead and put some tables, copy, paste. You can put some tables in there, or you can use these. It's up to you which one you want, but it's a nice little trick on, now it won't work with square tables because, take a guess, there's 90 degree, there's angles on there that just won't work. But with a circular table, it will totally work and it looks okay. The only issue is that the angle of the grain of the wood is going to be pretty much the same. You could end up doing this. You could go to transform and then just go to 58 like this and switch it around, and then you could do that. So there's only 2 directions the grain of the wood can go with this trick, and that is either left to right or up and down. You can also use the shape tool. Absolutely, you can use the shape tool. The thing is that I don't want to make a shape tool for every single thing because it's just time consuming. You totally could. And I wouldn't be against that, but we'd be here for like 3-4 hours putting this together to get it right if we did it that way. So I'm not going to make everything with the shape tool. But you totally can, and it's not difficult. You can just use the isometric grid as your guide, use the shape, use the pen, and then you can make your isometric, just like we made these isometric tiers, you make the tables the same way, right? You use a wooden fill, you go ahead and create another one to create the shape, the faces, just like we did with this table right here, right? I used 2 of these to create a top face and a front face. It's exactly the same with the shape tool. You'll make a top face and a front face. It's not complex. Just remember the tricks. The top face is lighter, the bottom face or the front face is going to be darker, and then things below that are going to be even darker still. Okay, so just remember that. So we have some tables here. I think that looks good. What I will end up doing is maybe making a little bit of a table right here that goes across. I'll just use this as a table. I think that will work just fine. And you want to have enough room for patrons or for the owners to walk around to get behind it. And I don't like how bright it is. I like the darker wood a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and just bring the brightness down. And then we can use the shape tool to make some things. For instance, we can make like a table runner. And what I'll do is I'll use maybe a white stroke, and then maybe I'll use a fill. Oopsie, this is a shape. I need to use line here. One moment here. Here we go. Shape, line, and then fill. And then let's use a rug. Let's use this color right here, rug. And then what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and place it like this, right on top. And it doesn't have to be angled perfectly. I think having it messy a little bit kind of makes a little bit of sense. So I'll go ahead and add it. And then we'll go up a layer. There we go. And if the lines are too straight, nice little trick, you can go in right here and just go in, make sure you have merge shape. Go to the pen, go to the brush, bring the scale way down, and just very lightly add in some waves. Like this, just lightly add in some waves to give it a little bit more of a feel to it. Same thing here, add a little bit at the top, just a little bit. You don't want to add too much, you don't want to overdo it. Just a little bit to give it the sense that there's creases and curves. Creases, and then if you want to take it even a step further, you can start using line tool to create shadows and stuff. So what we can do is we can take this, make it black, blur, and we'll bring the opacity down. Let's go ahead and just put the line down real quick first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the line going from one edge like this. Let's push it up. Let's make it up a layer. My bad. There we go. Really bring that blur. There we go. And then let's bring the size down a little bit. And then you'll notice that you can create this sense of folds. And you can take that same black one and then just make it white. Blur it like I did before. Bring the opacity down. And what we're creating is the highlights and the shadows. So if you want to create this illusion that there's some highlights and shadows, you can totally just take these and just do this. And you can rotate them as you need to connect to each one to create the folds. So you see how much detail you can go into it? It just depends how much time you're willing to take to do it. It's up to you. So super easy. So it's pretty crazy, right? It's not complex. It's just simple. I mean, right now these are probably a little too dark, but I could bring the opacity down a little bit. You could also use the overlay blend mode. Like you could use overlay like this, and then that would really help to kind of break down some of that white. And so now you have this nice white thing. If you feel the line is too thick, you can also bring the line thickness down. There you go. And that's how simple it is to kind of put things together, using your art mind to put things together. Overlay blend mode. Super easy stuff. And what I should do is select all of this stuff, create group, and call it table. Right? Perfect. There we go. And now we have that table. Oopsie, it looks like it grouped it. My bad. I didn't press enter. So that's probably what happened. Table. There we go. Create. So super easy stuff. Same thing here. I think what I might do is bring the brightness down on these a little bit to get that darker wood color. So I'll go in here, bring the brightness down, and just remember the trick. You just have to bring the brightness down of the elements beneath it further and further. And then we'll also touch base on shadows as well. I'll show you how to create a shadow underneath it. There we go. I think that looks good. And with the shadow, you could just take color black, bring the opacity down. Remember, we set this to the FG layer of the ground. You could just paint your shadow right underneath. There you go. And I'm using a mouse to do that, see? And there's your shadow. And you're going to want to paint your shadows. And where else I paint shadows is I usually do them against the wall edges in the corners, where you would kind of expect some shadow to be. So those wall corners are a good place to kind of put your shadows. There you go. Right underneath here is a good place to put shadow, and then underneath this table right here. So now we have those nice shadows. There we go. Nice. Grouping is super important, okay? Especially if you have a lot of groups. Notice how I have multiple groups and I don't know what this is. So really I should be labeling this rename round table or R table if you don't want to write the whole thing. And what's really cool is once you've labeled something, you can go to rename, and then when I go R, it'll say, it doesn't look R table. I put a space R table, right? So it saves what you've labeled it. So that's really nice, something that you can do there, okay? Let's go ahead and save it because there are so many changes. And we're going to go for about another 20 or 30 minutes or so. So this is going to be a little bit longer than usual. But we still need to get all the details in, and we need to put in all the different display stuff. And I might make variations of this table because I kind of like that table. You can also use, in Fantasy Regional, you can also use docs. These other docs, these also work as well as a table. You can even stack them to make shelves. If you take a pole and just put it like right on top like this. Oopsie, let me go ahead and fix this real quick. Put these down a layer. There we go. Let's make these a little bit darker. And if you put poles right where right here, put them on top like this. Just like that. Make sure they're lined up. And then if you put this right on top, like that, you can kind of create a little bit of a shelf of your own if you want. The only thing is that you can see these little, where water is supposed to be, those little circular things. That's the only downside. So if that doesn't bother you too much, and it doesn't really bother me that too much, everyone has different tastes. I know some people, want it to be a little bit more perfect than that. That's fine. That's fine. It's all personal choice. Just create group and then call it a shelf. And then you can put it right up against the wall in the back. Right here. I might even want to move this table a little bit more right here. In fact, I might move it all the way against here, and then that way it kind of makes a little bit more sense. There we go. Yep, you can always paint over them. It just depends. You need to decide how much detail you want to put into it, whether you want to add a ton more detail or if you only want to add a little bit of detail. That's just really up to you. Me, personally, it just depends. If you're making a map for just your personal private game and you're not worried about it, then don't worry about those details. Yet, if you are doing a professional game or you're making professional maps for somebody, then you probably want to pay as much attention to detail as possible. So that's just really up to you to decide how you want to go about doing it. Now, what's really cool with groups is that you can flip them. So if I flip this group, I have some shelving available for me just like that. And I can place these shelves, copy and paste all along here if I want. So I can copy and paste these, place them right here. I might have to push this back a layer so it goes back. So it goes behind. Same thing with this one. I might have to push it back a layer. There we go. So that is the trick there. You can copy and paste those. Copy and paste. Maybe I want to put one like right over here, like this. Or maybe I want to put another round table up in this corner right here, instead of having a square one. So I want to put a round table there. Maybe I want to put a couple round tables, maybe one over there, and then another one of these right here. So you're kind of getting the general idea on how it kind of works. when you're putting things together. You can change up everything if you decide where you want things to be. So copy and paste, put some stuff over here. So there's a lot of displays here, as you can see. And if you want, you can even stack them high up. So if you want, you can stack these on top of each other like that, and then just put a ladder. And there are a couple ways to make a ladder, and this is depending on how picky you are. You can choose a ladder from the pirate like this, but the angle is off, or you can make one using poles. So it's really up to you. I personally would probably make them out of poles. And it's not too complex. It's pretty easy. You just need to make the two sides, the two poles going vertical, and then you make the side poles going across. That's really it. But because we're short on time, I'm not going to show you how to make one. I think a lot of you already kind of understand how I would go about doing that already, just by what I've already been showing you. But you can totally use those to kind of create ladders so that customers want to climb up. We can copy and paste and create a couple of these. So let's copy and paste a couple over here. And if you want, you can even place one. You can even place one of these up against the wall right here, like this. Taking the kind of replacing what would be technically be wall right there. And so you can always do that as well. So lots of different options on how you want to set it up. Yeah, the railing on this thing is about as tall as the shelves. It's an easy fix. You just go back and just shrink the poles a little bit, and then it would have the railing would be shorter. I'm actually going to cover the railing probably with some vines and stuff. I would think that would be a nice little design element. So once you've kind of put all that together, and I've kind of noticed that I've used all the same one, my mistake. So I want to make sure that I don't do that. So I'll put another one over here. I don't want them all to be the grain to all be exactly the same. Notice the grain was always facing the same way. And I just don't want to make that mistake. Okay, so you guys kind of see the general layout so far. We've got the tables set up. We've got the displays. Now we just need to save and then put on the details. And we're moving along. This took about an hour for all of this. That's not too bad. We're moving at a good speed. We've lost couple people already. All right, so the next thing that we can do is that we can also put tablecloths on top of these by just using a red. You can take a rug, and remember that trick, you could just go in like this, scale it down, and just put that rug right on top, and just make sure that it scales to the right size. There you go. And then you can place a couple of these. You could put one on top here, one on top of here. If you want, you can use a different one. You could use this red one instead. Just make sure you scale it right. Bring it down. You can make them all different colors. It doesn't have to be red. They could be green ones, blue ones, whatever color you want, right? Just remember that trick to create, change it. Just change the scale. Push up. So now you got some rugs on top of the tables. I think that's a nice little touch. There we go. Nice. All right. So now you have that stuff on top of there. Great. Now we have a little more pop of color in there. That works out great. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variation of the ground texture. Let's go to size and let's bring it even bigger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this nice little trick of having various different stone colors, stone sizes. So I'll go with like this and have some of the stone be big and some of the stone be small. And this will kind of remove the, I don't know, when I look at it with all one size, it seems odd, right? It looks like it's just too much uniformity. But by changing the scale, you can have big stones and little stones, and it gives it a nice feel to it, and I really like that. All right, lots of changes are being made. Okay, now we can start putting on some details that we want to put on top of stuff. We can put in windows and stuff later, but let's go into details. And one thing you can do is there's a couple things that you can use. You can use Fantasy Regional. There are a couple items like crates and barrels. Those work just fine. And when it comes to the baked-in shadow, you have two options for dealing with a baked-in shadow like this. One, you can put a light source down there where the barrel is, and then put the light source where in the adjacent or facing away from the barrel, so that way it justifies where the shadow is, or you can just use a clipping mask with the shape tool to hide it. This decision is up to you, okay, what you want to do, because it looks a little inconsistent and weird when you have baked in shadows, when really you want to have more control of the shadows by using the clipping mask. So what I'll do is when I usually select a barrel or a crate, what I'll end up doing, you can't rotate the shadow. It's baked in. So whichever way I flip it, it's baked into it. And it's an easy fix. You can fade it out using filters. You can change the brightness of it. You can change the blend mode if there's something behind it. There's all these different ways of doing it. For me, I just use clipping masks to hide it. And what I will do is I will place several of them on the map at once. Since I already have this selected, there's no reason not to place these. So what I'll do is I'll just place a bunch of barrels everywhere. So I'll place a couple here, place one maybe right up against over here against this wall, and I'll place one right here. Let's place one right over here on this side. Right here, overlap is important. So you notice how there's a line right here and there's no wall right here. To make up for that, just place a barrel or a crate or something and it just overlaps that part. That looks nice. Now that I've put down my barrels, I can switch and then maybe add in some different stuff, like maybe add in some sacks. Put one there. Let's put one maybe on top of this barrel right here, like that. Let's go ahead and put one on top of the shelf. Let's put maybe one on top of here maybe, and then one on top of here. Okay. Then I'll go ahead and switch over to the next piece that I want. Take one of these, place this. Let's put it up against here. Let's place another one right there. Place another one over, I think right there should look good. And in this way, you don't have to go back and place a whole bunch more over and over again. You've already placed these down. And so you have these here and there. And you can also, I do believe you can flip these. You can flip it. It will flip the shadow, but if you don't mind using the clipping masks to hide the shadows, that works out just fine. Let's go ahead and add in more crates. Put in this crate right here. I don't want to add too much because I also want to add a bunch of interesting things in here. Otherwise, it's just nothing but crates and barrels. Right now, it looks like a storehouse, not necessarily like a store, because there's this storefront, but there's no beautiful items. I'm just going to fill in a lot of space with crates and barrels, and then I can throw in the specialty items later. So this is just a good start to throw in these items. Okay. All right. Now that I've thrown in some crates and barrel stuff just to kind of fill in the negative space, we can start throwing in more elaborate stuff. And what's really cool is that fantasy battle maps will work just fine. You can actually go in and I'll expand all assets, and there's all these different things that you can use. You can scroll through and you can say you want to sell some, if it's a general store, maybe you want to sell some of these water jugs. Maybe you want to put several water jugs in the same area. Whenever you're putting details in a store, maybe organize each section of the store by a theme. So if this is a general store, then there's going to be selling multiple goods. Then maybe put all the water jugs together, all the camping gear together. So maybe I have some camping gear right here. I want to put that right there. I want to have a couple of these maybe leaning up against right here, maybe one on the ground like this. And just to show some depth, I'll actually bring the brightness down. These should be a little bit darker too. There we go. So you have camping gear over here. You can take a full camp bag and put it right here. Put it on top. Let's see, can I put it over here? Let's try over here. There we go. Let's put that right there. Perfect. And big bag right there. Let's put another one and just kind of put it right here like that on top. There we go. Okay, so we have a series of bags that you can get over here. So when you're putting together, again, you want to think about the theme of each section. So this is kind of a camping gear. Maybe I want to have some weapons or potions. So I want to go over here. And if I type in potion, so you have all these various potions right here. And the way that this kind of works is that I just rotate them so that way they're kind of facing upward like this. Go in. This one's kind of got a tilt to it, so I'll tilt them. And generally you might want to have multiple variations of potions on there. There should be some more. One right here. Place a couple right here. And what's always nice is to throw a couple on the ground just to kind of give it a nice little feel to it. And then we're going to make sure we overlap too, so that this way one's underneath the railing so you can kind of see that way. Let's make this one a little bit darker so it looks like it's kind of underneath of it. A little bit darker. Let's rotate this one this way. Put a little bit further that way. And then let's kind of maybe take two of these ones, put them down below, and then bring the brightness down. Yep, clean up on aisle 2. All right, so now you have potions in that section. All right, so we'll keep adding more and more stuff. Oh, there's some nice little equipment right here. We can put that there. We can maybe put a couple of these together like that. That looks good. That one might not work. Let's see here. And then let's add some blue potions here as well on top. Just like that. There we go. Let's see here. Ooh, there's also some specialty potions that we can put over here. Like this. Just stack a couple of them. There we go. All right. Okay. Let's keep adding more and more stuff. What about a section with masks? There's a lot of different masks. So let's put a bunch of masks on a table. Let's make sure that I have the scale right. That's about the size of a potion. I want to get a person's face right. So let's just go ahead and put a bunch of these masks on the table here. Ooh, let's just make sure that I grab every single one of them. And then there should be more than just those two. There's also some jungle ones as well. Throw them all in there. A couple jungle ones. Let's also throw in some of the orc ones as well. So you have a table for masks. Let's even throw one on the ground. That fell on the ground like this. The angle's about right. And just bring the brightness down. There we go. Okay. All right. So we're kind of putting it together. See all everything's kind of coming together. Let's quickly save it. Awesome. Yeah, it's coming together really well so far. I'm really enjoying the way that it's going. So just remember this trick that you want to make the shape interesting of the building by either its verticality or its volume by the shape of the ground. So you could make it an L. The building could be an L shape, a T shape, the shape of an H. It could be a circular building. It could be an octagon, a hexagon. It could be whatever. So whenever you're kind of thinking about the shape, just kind of remember that when you're putting it together. Very, very helpful. Okay, let's just keep adding more and more details because we have a lot still. Where are we at for time? 12 minutes? Okay. Yeah, I'm saying about 18 minutes and then we need to call it good. Let's just keep scrolling through. Let's put in tools. This is a general store or store. Remember, whatever store it is, that's what kind of details you're going to use, right? So if it's a potion shop, then the whole thing should be filled with potions. If it's a storefront for weapons, and there should be weapons and everything on these shelves with armor and stuff. So you need to make that decision for yourself. What you need to have. So let's go ahead and put down a bunch of tools on this one. In fact, we'll have this one leaning up against something. It's always fun to like change things up by having things lean up against stuff. So we'll put this one maybe leaning up against this table like this. Just a little bit. I'll bring the brightness down. It's a little too dark. There we go. Let's keep adding more tools. Oh yeah, there's a nice little... We'll add that one there. A hammer, a shovel. I saw a fishing rod. We could put that in there as well. I guess that counts as tools. And then let's see, what else can we add here? There should be some other... Oh, an axe. Let's add an axe. Yep. Let's flip this around, face it the other way. There we go, like that. So lots of tools. So that's good. Okay. Let's go ahead and put some keys down on top of the desk down here. Put the keys down there. Okay. Oh, there's some other tools right here. That's great. We'll put those. Let's put a couple of these tools on top of this barrel right here. There we go. And then let's put some on the ground too, just right over here on the ground. Kind of makes sense. And if I can put it underneath the table, that'd be great. Make it look like it fell down. There we go. And then whenever I put something underneath the table, like I was doing earlier, just bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. And it's always good to do this overlapping thing. Overlapping is how you create depth. So having one thing on top of another thing on top of another thing, the more and more that you overlap, the more and more that you overlap, the more depth that you're creating. So just remember that trick. All right, let's just keep going. We have so much more items still that we can put on here. There's also hats. So if we want, we can maybe put hats down. Let me look at the mask, and then I can use the mask as a reference for scale. There we go. And let's just put these hats just right on top of here, like on a rack. Put another one right here. Another one right here. Let's put one on this table. And the way that we fix this issue is that we can change the scale, remember, by just doing this a little bit. There we go. Actually, it loses that face, so that doesn't actually work. My mistake. What I wanted to make them look like is they're hanging off of those poles right there. Perfect. There we go. That looks good. Ooh, oh, now this one I can actually rotate because it is a circle. Remember that trick that I taught you guys. You can rotate it like that. There we go. And let's put this one... let's put this one underneath. Okay, there we go. Let's take a step back and just kind of look at where we're at. It is really coming together. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and add in some last bit of details real quick. And then we got to go into lighting and shadows because we only have 15 minutes left. But you get the general idea on how it works. You need to organize each section by a theme when you're creating a store. If you're making a haberdashery or your general store, each section, tools, masks, you get the general idea on how it works, right? So just remember when you're putting things together to do that. I think I've added enough details. I mean, I could put in maybe some jewel stuff to put a little bit of color in. I think those would be nice here because maybe at this place you can do, maybe at this place you can actually use jewels, you can use coin. The items that you want to use to show that it looks like this is where the currency or the desk where you get your coin or where you buy stuff is to just put a coin bag and some stuff on here, and this will kind of make it look like, all right, this is where I go and I pay. So I'll put that there. Let's also put some coins in here. Remember that trick, just go to transform, change the height a little bit. And I'm going to turn off random rotate and then random stamp, and then I can just place some coins like that, and then just bring the brightness down and then put a couple on the ground. This is just me. I always like to put a little bit of details everywhere. Just a little bit of detail here and there really, really means a lot. It can make a lot of difference. So just putting in some coin there, that looks good. Okay. So I'm going to quickly save, and then we're going to go into the light and shadow work. We might want to also create just a few more rugs using the shape tool for the ground, because I've noticed that it's just this brown color for the floor. And honestly, that's okay, but I think a series of rugs might make this look more interesting. And just like before, you can use the circular rugs to be on the floor, and I'll show you how to use the shape tool to make non-circular ones. So I could take this rug right here and just place it on the ground like this. Make sure that it's underneath everything. Go like this, make sure it's the right angle. Rotate it, there we go. And then just bring the brightness down. There we go. And there's one rug right there. We'll add a couple circular rugs down to the bottom here. So we'll put another one like right here. And then the rest can be square. And we'll just use the shape tool for that. And this time I'll do something a little bit different. First, I'll just make the shape first of the rug that I want. And don't forget to use Control key here. There we go. And then I'll just press Enter. There we go. There's that shape. Push it down. Make sure it's down a layer. There we go. Now from here, I want to play around with it. I can change things up if I want. I can use different types of textures. Like I can use this kind of texture right here if I want for a rug. I could use a green texture rug. I could use this for a rug color. I mean, there's all these different things that you can use for a rug. There's even some sci-fi Battlemap textures that work great for rugs. Let me see here. Let me go to Sci-Fi Battlemap real quick, and I'll show you. Let's see here. Sci-Fi Battlemap. There should be some. There it is right here. So you can use these, this kind of rug right here. Just make sure that you change the scale so you can see it. but you can use that for a rug. If you're going to do that, I don't use the white part because with a runner, there's usually linen, and the linen is usually white around the edge of it. I don't want to show that there's linen on a rug. Instead, what I'll do is just choose a different color. And what I could use is just a darker variation of the color that I'm already kind of using. And that can kind of represent that edge. And then from there, I can just go in and use the shape tool, just like I did before, the brush. Make sure it's merged. And then I can just make some waves, just like I did before, just to get rid of that super straight. Because rugs, they can be super straight, but there's generally some folds and creases that are on a rug, right? When you walk on a rug, you kind of stub it a little bit, and then it kind of moves and rustles a little bit. And so that is kind of how you create a rug that kind of fits better. And then, of course, you can change the texture to anything that you want. So I could use this color. You can use whatever you want. Just make sure that you use a color that works, right? So you can use this color. Right now, we have a lot of warm colors. We have reds, we have browns, but we don't have any cool colors. So let's stick with the rug idea. I kind of like this color. I'll make it a little bit brighter. There we go. Okay. And then we can kind of do that. And then what we can do is you can use multiple of these. So I can make another one. And then I can just change the texture that I want. So I can go in and change the texture on it. Let's go back to Fantasy Battlemaps. And let's just choose, I already have blue. Let's go with green. There we go. And then I can just add a green color. Or if I want, I can go in and use this particular texture right here. Like that. There you go. Okay, and the green works well here because it already has those green bags and stuff. So I think that works well there. So you're kind of getting the general idea on putting rugs together. Let's go ahead and add in our light sources. Let's say that I want to have lights hanging from the ceiling, hanging down like a chandelier. I'm not going to create the chandelier part, though we totally could, but you could just use a light source to represent that there is... Oh, and let's make sure they got Fantasy Battlemap. I can just take a light source and just put it layer +5 all the way at the top, and then just put it right where the displays are. Now, when you're thinking about lighting, you need your customers, your patrons need to see the displays. So putting a light source on top of where each display is a great start because that way they can see the display. And they also want to see where they're walking. So placing some light sources above the staircases might not be a bad idea. Placing them on top of this table right here is a good place. So these are where all the light fixtures are hanging down. You don't need to make the light fixtures itself. You simply need to add the light source that goes down, and that way that lights up. Now, once you've established where the light sources are, now you can start painting in shadows, and you can use whatever you want to paint in shadows. You could use the shape tool, you could use the line tool, you could use the top layer. It's up to you on how you want to do that. Ooh, yeah, a chandelier would be awesome, but we don't have enough time for it. But I would love to do that. Let's quickly add in some final bit of details in here, and then we're going to add in shadows, and we're going to add in well, there doesn't need to be a lot of shadows, actually. Well, yeah, we'll do a little bit of shadow work. And then we'll also use filters to do the finishing touches. So let's quickly do that. Let's go ahead and throw in these vines that I want to throw down because there's a lot of inconsistency work. If you look carefully, you'll notice there's a lot of inconsistency here with the poles for this railing. And what I do to fix that is I just use a vine to kind of hide that. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and place a vine like this and just bring the scale down. And also, vines just look nice, right? They just look more interesting. It gives it more detail. It makes it look more interesting. It adds some greenery to it. And so what I'll do is just have it go along the railing and some of the base of the poles too, if you want. Great places to put them are like corners, like this, at the edges there. Vary them. Don't have it just be one straight line going all the way down. Vary them in segments to kind of create this interesting like shape and design. There we go, like that. There we go. Let's add another piece right here. And then let's go up. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. I think overall that looks nice. Let's take a step back and just see how the vines look there. Yeah, I'd say overall the vines look good there. It adds a little bit of flavor to it. Okay, that looks nice. Let's go ahead now and let's go ahead and add in some shadows. I'm going to use the top layer. I'm going to use color. And this is what my trick is. What you'll do is you'll go down to around, let's go to about 40. Well, let's go with 50. And then what I'll do is I'll fill the entire thing. I'll just go fill. Just press that fill button. And now the whole thing is covered in this color. You could do even fill again, like this. Then switch over to erase. And then switch over to like maybe around 40. And then what you'll do from here is you already established where your light sources are. So now just fill in, erase where the light sources are. Where the light sources are. And then this will kind of help to create a sense of shadow work. This works good. And since we'll put more lighting up here too as well. And we'll put one here, here. Just keep erasing here. There should be some shadows underneath here, some light source here, against here, and there's some light sources here. There we go. Okay. All right, that looks good. Okay. And we also have the lighting on the staircase. There we go. Okay, great. All right, let's go into some shadows here. Okay, yeah, this is coming together nicely. Just gonna erase more here to kind of get rid of those shadows. This looks good. This looks good. Okay. Yeah, there we go. And yeah, let's erase more where that light is right here. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Now let's add filters. One thing that we might want to consider adding in is we might want to add in some more artifacts to the ground, more grittiness to make it feel like it's been moved around a bit. So what I'll do is I'll go in, I'll go to Parchment World, and we're going to use this old paper. We're going to click Overlay, and it's going to add in some dirt-like artifacts. You notice that it kind of adds a little bit of dirt to it. See what happens when I turn it off? It adds a little bit of dirt and grime and wear to it, what I call a little bit of wear. And that's always nice to add there. And what I'll do is I'll bring it down to layer 4 so that it doesn't screw up the light sources. So now the light sources won't have these crazy artifacts on them, and it won't screw that up. The other thing that this kind of does is it makes it a little bit darker. So what I'll end up doing is switching over to clarity to give it more pop. And then I'll also go over to color adjustment filters, and I'll boost the brightness up a little bit. And then that way I have a little bit more lighting, and I'll even boost up the saturation just a little bit, and then maybe a little bit of the contrast. There we go. And that will give it some extra saturation, some extra color to it, and extra pop to it. There we go. So you guys get the general idea. I'm going to save it. So you start with the base, the floor. That's going to determine the shape of your building, right? After you've made the base, you'll start putting together the wooden frame of the wall. Once the frame has been assembled using pole and line shape pole, then you'll end up using the shape tool to fill in the wall. You can use whatever texture you want. I use 2 textures. You'll notice that the right wall has that white wooden wall texture, and then the other one is a stucco or kind of a stucco or plaster-like feel to it, right? I also did, and then after you've made the walls, because the walls frame in the building, right? Like think of it as a box with the walls. So you boxed it in with the walls, then you'll start creating the various levels, okay? For me, for this one, what was important was the verticality. That's why we've got these 4 different levels that your players can walk on and explore. And then each section. And then you want to create access. I created the stairs and then the railing so that people wouldn't fall off onto the next level. And then I also threw in all the various tables in which the displays will be on. You always start from biggest stamp, the smallest stamp first. And the reason why that is because if you start small and then work big, you're going to be doing a lot more work. You start with big stamps so that it fills up more room, and then medium stamps so that it fills up that room, and then smaller stamps to fill up that room. You know what? You're right. Just have your players just stumble and fall down those 3 stairs. If that's what they want, that's up to you, Dan. Okay? I don't torture my players. Sometimes. Not all the time. Whenever they let me, right? Well, anyway, hey, thank you guys so much. It has been a solid hour and a half. It's a long freaking stream. But I hope that you guys kind of figured this out on how to put this together. I will indeed make this map clonable. So I'll go ahead and save this. I'll add it to my profile, the Maddie profile. I'll finish adding all the details on it, just adding in more details. And then you guys can go ahead and just clone and edit and use it this, because I really like this map quite a bit. And so I will finish it up so that you guys can use it. All right. All right. Thank you so much for watching. This Friday, we have another stream. We're going to be covering, let me think for a minute here. I do believe it's going to be a new series covering battle map architecture, because I notice that some people struggle with, like, how is it that I structurally put together my interiors, like my barn or my tavern or my temple or whatever. This series is dedicated to help you guys figuring out your architectural designs for your battle maps. And the very first one's going to be residential. I want you guys to figure out how to put together these residential homes, because when you're making battle maps, the most frequent interior that I know of outside of dungeons is houses. So I'll show you how to put together your houses and how to put together the architecture to make sense when you're putting together those buildings. All right, again, thank you so much. And I will see you all on Friday, hopefully, at the same time, 3 p.m. PST. Please take care. Bye, everybody.